The Cross estate never truly slept. At night the walls seemed to breathe alive with whispers of footsteps in the halls, the static of radios carried by guards, and the relentless hiss of the ocean striking the cliffs below. Each sound reminded me that I was not free here. I was caged, silk-wrapped, marble-walled, but still a prisoner. And yet, every time I closed my eyes, I remembered the fire of his kiss. Alexander Cross, my captor, my husband, my enemy, or perhaps something else I refused to name. I had not slept properly in days. Nights turned into dawns. Dawns bled into evenings, and the rhythm of life here was dictated not by time, but by him. Alexander worked in shadows behind closed doors, speaking to men who bowed their heads and never questioned his authority. The empire bent beneath his will. And me, I was expected to bend too. But I had never been good at bending. I wandered the halls at night, restless, sleepless, searching for pieces of myself that I feared I had already lost. That was when I found the library. The library was a cathedral of silence. Shelves rose higher than the chandeliers, heavy with books that smelled of dust and centuries. Ladders leaned against them, and velvet drapes filtered the moonlight into pale silver beams. For a moment, I almost forgot I was trapped. For a moment, I felt like a girl again, one who had once hidden in libraries to escape the world's noise. But then my fingers found a book that didn't belong. It was tucked behind others, its spine cracked with age, its leather cover nearly torn. Unlike the rest, it bore no title, only a crest embossed in fading gold, a circle within it, a rose wrapped in chains. My breath caught. I had seen that crest before. It was carved into Delgado's ring, etched on the council chamber walls, whispered in the conversations I wasn't meant to hear, the crest of Bandari. My bloodline. I pulled the book free with trembling hands. Dust scattered into the moonlight like ash. The weight of it felt deliberate, as though centuries had pressed themselves into the pages. My chest ached with a strange premonition as I opened it. And then I saw her handwriting. My mother's. The words faded, but her voice was still woven into the ink. If you are reading this, Naomi, you have found what I tried to bury. You are the last Bandari. The blood of empires runs through you whether you want it or not. They will come for you not because of who you are, but because of what you represent. Remember, this love is not protection. Love can destroy more fiercely than hatred. And beware the cross. Beware the one who carries his name. My vision blurred. Tears burned hot, falling onto the page before I could stop them. My mother, who had died running, hiding, sacrificing everything, had known. She had known they would come. She had known I would end here. And she had warned me of him. Beware the cross. My hands shook violently as I shut the journal. Rage and sorrow tangled in my chest until I couldn't breathe. Every piece of me screamed that Alexander had known all along. His lies, kisses, and possessive whispers of, "You are mine," were not born of desire, but strategy. He had stolen my life because of a bloodline I had never asked for. The door creaked. I spun, clutching the journal to my chest. And there he was. Alexander stood in the doorway, shadows draped over him like a crown. His suit was midnight dark, his tie loosened as though he had abandoned another council meeting only minutes ago. His gaze fell on the book in my hands, and his expression changed not with surprise, but with something quieter, something dangerous. "You found it," he said softly. His voice was smooth velvet but scraped against my skin like a blade. "You knew," I whispered, my throat raw. "You knew who I was from the very beginning." His jaw tightened, though his eyes never left mine. Yes. The single word shattered something inside me. All this time, the plane, The marriage, the cage, the kiss. Every moment was built on a truth he had kept from me. I laughed, but the sound cracked bitter. You didn't save me, Alexander. You trapped me. You've been playing me like a piece on a board. He stepped closer, his movements unhurried, deliberate, the way predators moved. I protected you, he said, his voice low. If Delgado had reached you first, if Caruso had discovered you before I did, you would already be dead. They would have torn you apart, Naomi, and used your blood, your name, until nothing was left but ashes. And what are you doing? I spat, my eyes burning, and kept me in silk chains instead of steel ones. That's not protection. That's possession. His gaze burned hotter sharp, as fire pressed into steel. Better possessed than buried. I shook my head, clutching the journal tighter. You killed my mother. The silence that followed was heavier than stone. His jaw flexed, his fists tightening at his sides. When he finally spoke, his voice was ragged. I gave the order. The words fell like thunder. Rage tore through me, violent and wild. My hand moved before I could think, grabbing the letter opener from the desk. I held it to his throat, my whole body trembling. You lied. You told me you wanted to protect me, to save me. But you destroyed everything. You destroyed her. His eyes never flinched, though the blade pressed against his skin. A faint bead of blood welled where I pushed harder. He said she would run to Caruso, voice steady, despite the danger. She would have delivered you to him. Do you know what they would have done with you? What would they have made you become? I did the only thing I could. I chose the lesser evil. You call that mercy. My voice broke my tears, hot and furious. I call it survival. For a long moment, we stood frozen in the library, the predator and the prey, except neither knew which was which anymore. His breath brushed against my cheek, his eyes burning into mine. And then, slowly, deliberately, he lowered his head until his lips hovered just above my ear. You can hate me, Naomi, he whispered. You can curse me, scream at me, despise me. But you will not leave me, because out there is worse than me. Out there is death. Here, his voice faltered just for a breath. Here, at least, you are mine. The words broke me more than any blade could, because the most terrifying part of it all was that some traitorous part of me wanted to believe him. The journal slipped from my trembling hands and fell to the marble floor with a soft thud. I stumbled back, clutching my chest, my lungs aching for air. I will never be yours, I whispered. He smiled faintly, but it wasn't joy. It was something darker, something inevitable. We'll see. That night, I couldn't close my eyes. The journal's words echoed louder than the ocean. Beware the cross. But how do you beware a man when you're already chained to him? The days that followed blurred. Guards stationed closer. Alexander's men moved like shadows, their loyalty absolute. Everywhere I turned, his presence lingered, his cologne in the halls, his voice in the study, his shadow stretching across my nights. And yet the memory of that confession clung to me. He had killed my mother. He had stolen my life. He had kissed me like I was his salvation. And I hated that part of me still burning for him. Hate and desire were fire from the exact match, and Alexander Cross had already lit it. When I look back now, I realize that was the true beginning. Not the plane, not the false wedding, not even the night he tore Delgado's men apart to save me. The true beginning was the journal, my mother's words, the truth I could no longer ignore, because nothing would ever be the same once I knew who I was. Naomi Bandari, the last heir to a dynasty built on blood. Not for me, not for Alexander, not for the world that waited outside those iron gates. If you followed Naomi this far, if you felt the sting of betrayal, the pull of danger, the fire of a love that terrifies, even as it tempts. Then you already know this story is only beginning. Tell me in the comments, would you trust Alexander after this? Or would you burn his empire to the ground? Your likes, thoughts, and presence here tell me you're with Naomi on this impossible journey. And believe me, you don't want to miss what comes next, because the storm hasn't even broken yet. Stay close. The fire is only beginning to burn. The ocean outside the Cross estate roared like a beast, restless and merciless. The waves struck the cliffs like they longed to drag the house into the black abyss below. Inside, the air was no calmer. Something had shifted since the night in the library. I carried my mother's journal everywhere, hiding it beneath my pillow like a relic. I didn't need to reread it. The words were carved into me now, etched deep where no one could erase them. Beware the cross. The warning pulsed with every heartbeat. Alexander moved through the halls like a storm wearing a man's skin. He had admitted to killing my mother, and yet every time I looked at him, I saw not guilt, but certainty. He believed himself justified. Worse, he thought himself right. But hatred was not the only thing I felt. And that was the real betrayal. It began 2 mornings later. I was seated at the long breakfast table, untouched food spread like jewels across porcelain plates, when one of Alexander's men entered, his face pale. He placed a folder beside Alexander's coffee cup. "Delgado," the man said quietly. Alexander flipped the folder open. I saw the photographs before he slid them out of sight. They were everywhere on the glossy pages of underground tabloids, splashed across encrypted networks that thrived on gossip more dangerous than truth. Me, I am in a white dress. I am beneath a veil. I have Alexander's hand around mine. The false wedding had gone public. My blood froze. I glanced at Alexander. His face was stone unreadable, though the vein in his temple beat like a war drum. "He's forcing my hand." Alexander murmured more to himself than anyone else. "Clever bastard." I pushed my chair back. "What does that mean?" His eyes lifted to mine, steel gray, unwavering. "This means you will come with me to the council tonight." "The council." The word tasted foreign heavy. He said calmly that you've been hiding in shadows, though calm was only the surface of a fire burning too hot. But Delgado has pulled you into the light. If I do not present you, they will circle like wolves who smell weakness. And if they smell weakness, they will strike. I shook my head violently. "No, I won't parade myself like some prize." His jaw tightened, but his voice remained smooth. "You are not a prize. You are proof. Proof that you stand with me, not with them." My laughter cracked sharp and bitter. "Stand with you. You mean belong to you." For once he didn't deny it. That evening, they dressed me in silk the color of blood. The gown clung to my body like liquid fire, every detail chosen not by me, but by hands that served him. Around my throat glittered a necklace, heavy with diamonds cold against my skin. I stared at my reflection in the mirror. The girl who gazed back was not Naomi Carter, the invisible waitress who had once scrubbed motel floors. She was Naomi Cross, or worse, Naomi Bandari, a queen made of ashes. Alexander appeared in the doorway, immaculate in a black suit that gleamed like midnight. His gaze slid over me, slow and deliberate, before meeting my eyes in the mirror. "They will look at you," he said, some with respect, some with hunger. "Do not lower your head to any of them." My chest tightened. "And if I refuse?" He stepped closer, his cologne curling around me like smoke. His fingers brushed a loose curl from my shoulder. "Then they will eat you alive." The council chamber smelled of smoke and money of blood disguised in velvet. A long mahogany table stretched across the room, polished to a mirror shine. Around it sat men in suits, darker than night, each gaze sharp enough to cut. Power hung in the air like humidity before a storm. The moment Alexander entered with me at his side, silence fell. Every head turned. Whispers rose, rippling like waves. Bandari. Alive. The girl. The wife. I forced myself to keep my chin high, though my knees trembled beneath the silk. Alexander's hand pressed lightly at my back, steady, commanding. "This is my wife," he announced, his voice as cold and sharp as glass. "Naomi Cross." A murmur swept through the chamber. Some eyes gleamed with suspicion, others with hunger, a few with something darker fear. And then Delgado rose from his chair. He wore midnight blue, his tie loose, his smile curved like a blade. His eyes found mine instantly, and he bowed slightly. Mockery, disguised as courtesy. "So, it's true," he drawled. "Alexander Cross has bound himself to a Bandari." The word cracked through the chamber like thunder. Bandari. I froze. My chest ached. My mother's warning echoing louder than ever. Alexander's jaw tightened. Enough. But Delgado only smiled wider. "Tell me, Naomi, did you know who you were before he stole you onto that plane? Did you know the truth of your blood? Or has your husband been keeping secrets from you?" The room hummed with tension. Dozens of eyes pinned me like knives. I turned to Alexander. For once, his mask slipped, and in the flicker of hesitation in his eyes, I saw it. The truth. He had known from the very beginning. My heart cracked open, raw and jagged. Betrayal surged hotter than fire. "You knew," I whispered through the room heard me. "You knew all along." Silence stretched, broken only by Delgado's low, satisfied laugh. "Ah," Delgado murmured, savoring the moment. "So the queen learned she was a pawn." I barely remembered the rest. The meeting blurred into smoke and murmurs. Alexander's voice cutting sharp commands. Delgado's laughter slicing through them like poison. But all I could hear was the pounding of my own blood. All I could feel was the weight of betrayal crushing my chest. When it was finally over, Alexander led me from the chamber, his grip firm on my wrist. The doors closed behind us with a sound like finality. I tore my hand from his. "You lied to me." He stopped, turning slowly. His gaze burned, his jaw set, but his voice was low, steady. "I kept you alive." My chest rose and fell with fury. "Alive. You stole my life. You decided everything, who I am, what I am, without telling me the truth. You wouldn't have survived it." He snapped, the calm cracking for the first time. "You think you hate me now? You would have run straight into Delgado's arms if I had told you to go into Caruso's hands. They would have torn you apart. And you didn't." My voice broke sharp as glass. "You've caged me, Alexander. You've stolen my freedom. You've used my name, my blood, for your war. Please tell me how that makes you different." His silence was louder than any denial. That night, I couldn't bear the walls of the estate. I slipped onto the balcony, the ocean's roar swallowing my sobs. The silk gown still clung to me, smelling of smoke and danger. My mother's journal was pressed against my chest, a lifeline I couldn't grasp. The wind lashed my hair across my face, cold with salt, but I welcomed the sting. It was real, unlike everything else. I whispered to the waves, though they carried my words away. "I'll never forgive him." But even as I said it, I remembered the fire of his gaze in the chamber, how he had stood between me and the wolves, daring any of them to touch me. And I hated that part of me still trembled for him. Inside, Alexander stood alone in his study, a glass of scotch untouched on the desk. He had faced enemies, wars, and betrayals. But nothing weighed heavier than the look in Naomi's eyes when she realized the truth. She hated him, and yet hatred was still better than indifference, because hatred meant fire, and fire at least was alive. The night after the council meeting weighed on me like chains made of smoke. I lay awake in the silk-covered bed that had never felt like mine, listening to the ocean's roar against the cliffs, a rhythm that echoed the pounding in my chest. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Alexander's face beneath the golden light of the chamber, his hand steady at my back, his voice calm as stone, declaring me his before men who devoured weakness, and Delgado's voice cutting through it all. So the queen learns she was a pawn. The truth had pierced deeper than any blade. Alexander had always known who I was. He had stolen not just my freedom, but my name, my very self. I hated him. And yet when I pressed my hand against my chest, I hated something else more. That my heart still beat faster when I thought of him. Morning brought no relief. Sunlight spilled across marble floors too bright and pure for the shadows inside me. Servants moved silently through the halls, their eyes carefully lowered. Guards stood stationed at every corner, their presence as suffocating as the gilded walls themselves. And Alexander moved like a storm, wrapped in a tailored suit. His voice clipped, his phone pressed to his ear, issuing commands in languages I didn't understand. Always in control, always untouchable. Except in the rare moments when his gaze met mine. In those moments, something shifted. A flicker of heat, of possession, of something raw that unsettled me more than anger ever could. That evening, he came to my chamber without knocking. The door swung open, and his presence filled the space before I could breathe. He wore no tie, his shirt undone at the collar, his hair slightly disheveled, as though the day had been long. But it wasn't his appearance that made my pulse race. It was how his eyes locked on me, sharp and burning. "We need to talk," he said. I crossed my arms over my chest. "Now you want to talk? After lying to me? After parading me like a shield?" His jaw flexed, but his tone was steady. I did what I had to do. The words snapped something inside me. "You always say that, Alexander. You killed my mother because you had to. You stole my life because you had to. You keep me locked in this prison because you have to. When will you stop pretending it's for me, when it's always been for you?" He moved closer, slow, deliberate. "You think I wanted this?" His voice dropped rough. "Do you think I tried to find you on that plane? Feel your head against my shoulder and realize in one moment that the rest of my life had already been rewritten." I froze, my throat tight. His hand lifted, brushing a curl from my cheek. "You hate me, Naomi. I see it every time you look at me." And yet, his thumb grazed the line of my jaw. "You still tremble when I'm near." Heat rushed through me, shameful, unwanted. I shoved his hand away. "That doesn't mean anything." His smile was faint, bitter. "It means everything." The air between us thickened, sharp with tension. My breath came too fast, my pulse hammering, as he stepped closer, still caging me against the edge of the bed without touching. "I am not your prisoner," I whispered, though my voice trembled. His eyes burned into mine. "Then prove it. Walk away." I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But my body betrayed me, rooted in place, trembling not with fear, but with something far more dangerous. His hand slid to the back of my neck, his touch firm, but not unkind, tilting my face toward his. "Tell me you don't want this," he murmured, "and I will leave." The words trembled on my lips, but they wouldn't form. Because in that moment, honesty was my enemy. And then his mouth was on mine. The kiss was not gentle. It was a fire meeting storm fury, colliding with hunger. My hands pushed against his chest, even as my lips parted beneath his. His taste was whiskey and smoke, his breath rough against mine. Every nerve in my body burned, every thought drowned. I hated him, and yet I kissed him back. The bed caught me as he pressed me down, his body hovering over mine, heavy with restraint. His lips trailed fire along my throat, his hands tracing the curves I had tried to shield from him. Every touch was a chain. Every gasp was a betrayal of my own defiance. The truth became unbearable when his shirt fell open, and his skin was pressed against MBLA. I wanted him. Not the empire, not the lies, not the man who had caged me, just him. And that was the most dangerous desire of all. Hours later, when the storm had quieted, I lay tangled in silk sheets, my body trembling and my heart racing. Alexander sat at the edge of the bed, his back to me, his broad shoulders tense, his hand gripping a glass of scotch he hadn't touched. Silence stretched between us, heavy and fragile. Finally, I spoke. "You used this." His head turned slightly. What? I pulled the sheets tighter around me. Us. This. You used it to chain me deeper to you, didn't you? He set the glass down, rising to his feet, his movements deliberate. "I don't need to use it, Naomi. You gave yourself to me. No chain could be stronger than that." My chest tightened, fury mixing with shame. Then maybe I was a fool. He stepped closer, his hand brushing my cheek, gentler this time, almost tender. "No," he murmured. "You were honest. For once you stopped lying to yourself." I turned away, swallowing hard. Because he was right. And I hated him more for it. The days that followed were a blur of contradictions. In public, I was the wife of Alexander Cross, the woman the world whispered about, the Bandari heiress whose blood could shift empires. At his side, I walked like a queen, chin-high, silk trailing every eye on me. But in private, I was at war with myself. Every glance from him sent my pulse racing. Every touch unraveled me, and every kiss felt like both salvation and surrender. I told myself it was a game, that I was using him as much as he was using me. If I leaned into the fire, I could learn its shape well enough to one day escape it. But late at night, when I lay awake with his arm heavy around me, I wondered if I was only lying to myself. As twilight bled into night, I found him in his study one evening. He stood at the window staring at the restless sea, his reflection fractured in the glass. Papers were scattered across the desk, maps and contracts, and empires were carved into ink and blood. "You're awake," he said without turning. I couldn't sleep, I admitted. Neither could he. I could see the tension in his jaw and the set of his shoulders. "What is it?" I asked. Finally, he turned to me. His eyes burned, but not with anger, with something raw. "Delgado moves against us," he said quietly, "and Caruso waits in the shadows. They circle closer every day. You are the key they want, Naomi. Not me. You." The truth struck deep. My mother's journal, the crest, the whispers, it had all led here. I was not invisible anymore. I was a weapon. "And what happens?" I asked softly, "when the weapon refuses to be used?" His gaze held mine, fierce and unyielding. "Then I will break every hand that dares reach for you." I shivered, not from fear, but from the terrifying truth of his devotion. Because Alexander Cross might cage me, he might lie, control, and betray. But he would burn the world before he let me go. As the waves roared and the estate slept that night, I lay awake with his words echoing through me. I told myself I hated him. And yet, when his hand found mine in the dark, I did not pull away. Because the fire between us was no longer a storm to resist. It was a blaze I could not escape. The sea had always been restless, but it roared louder than ever that night, as if the ocean itself knew what was coming. I stood on the balcony, the salt wind lashing against my face, the silk robe at my shoulders, no shield against the storm. Alexander had fallen silent these past days, busier, darker, as though every breath he took was made of smoke and iron. The estate pulsed with a tension I could not name. Guards doubled at every post. Doors locked tighter corridors filled with whispers. And through it all, I felt it. Something was coming. The truth arrived on a night heavy with rain. I had been pacing the halls, restless, when I heard raised voices from Alexander's study. His men rarely defied him, so the sound made me freeze. I crept closer, my bare feet silent against the marble. "Caruso has moved," one voice said, low but urgent. Alexander's reply was sharper, cutting like glass. "Where in New Orleans? He's declared himself. He's taken the Caruso throne." Silence. Then Alexander's voice again, quieter this time, though deadlier. "Impossible. The heir was killed years ago." The other man hesitated. "Apparently not." A pause stretched suffocating, and then the words that changed everything. "They call him Luca Bandari Caruso." My breath caught. The hallway tilted beneath me. Bandari. I pressed a trembling hand to my lips, biting back a cry. My heart thundered as the truth sank its claws into me. He wasn't just a Caruso. He was Bandari, my blood, my brother. I stumbled back to my chamber, every breath a storm. My mother's journal burned in my memory, her warnings, her whispers of bloodlines, her secrets buried in ink. She had never spoken of another child and never hinted at a son. But if it was true, if Luca lived, then I was not the last Bandari. I was not alone. Tears stung my eyes, hot and unwanted. For so long, I had carried the weight of invisibility, of abandonment. To know that somewhere out there, someone with my blood still lived, it was too much to bear. And yet the truth twisted sharply inside me. He was Caruso, enemy, and that made him Alexander's rival. The next day, I said nothing, not to Alexander, not to anyone. But my silence was heavy, and Alexander felt it. That evening he came to me. His eyes were darker than usual. His tie abandoned, his shirt sleeves rolled up. He looked less like the untouchable king of empires, and more like a man on the edge of war. "You've heard," he said. I swallowed hard. "He's my brother." His jaw tightened. "He's Caruso. He's Bandari." I shot back, my voice trembling. "He's my blood." For the first time, Alexander's control cracked. He stepped closer. His hand braced against the wall beside my head, his presence burning into me. "Blood does not make him yours," he growled. "Blood makes him dangerous." Tears pricked my eyes. "And what are you?" "Alexander, the man who killed my mother, the man who caged me in silk. Please tell me how you are different from him." His breath hitched, his eyes fierce and unyielding. "Because I have never lied about what I am. I am ruthless. I am cruel, but I will burn this world before I let it take you. Can you say the same for him?" I wanted to scream, to deny him, to tell him that blood was stronger than chains, that family meant more than fear. But deep down in the shadows of my heart, I wasn't sure. That night, I dreamed of Luca. Not his face. How could I when I had never seen it, but the idea of him. A brother. Someone who might have held me as a child. Someone who might have whispered comfort in the dark. Someone who might have fought beside me instead of against me. But when I woke, the dream dissolved into smoke. And Alexander's arm was heavy around me, his warmth burning like a brand. Days passed, each one sharper than the last. Rumors flooded the estate, whispers of Caruso soldiers, rallying behind Luca Delgado, aligning with him, and cities already painted with their shadow. The world was shifting, and I was at the center of it. One evening, Alexander summoned me to his war room. Maps sprawled across the table marked with pins and lines that carved up continents like prey. Men stood at attention, their faces grim. When I entered, silence fell. All eyes turned to me. "This," Alexander said, his voice hard, "is Naomi Cross. Bandari blood. She stands with me." The men bowed their heads, slightly murmuring words of loyalty. But I saw the doubt in their eyes, the calculation, the hunger. And then I saw the map. My gaze traced the red line that stretched across New Orleans, across Caruso territory, across Luca's name. I looked at Alexander, my voice trembling. "You're going to kill him." His eyes burned into mine. If I must. My throat closed. My pulse roared in my ears. He would kill my brother, my blood. And I didn't know whether to stop or let him. That night, I confronted him in the privacy of my chamber. "You can't," I whispered, tears spilling down my cheeks. "You can't kill him. He's my brother." Alexander's face was carved from stone, but his voice was raw. "If you stand in my world, Naomi, you will learn a cruel truth. Blood is not family. Loyalty is." I shook my head violently. "You don't understand. He's the only piece of me left, the only proof I wasn't alone in this world." His hand caught my chin, tilting my face until my eyes met his. His voice dropped rough and dangerous. "You were never alone. You have been mine since your head rested against my shoulder on that plane. And no brother, no Caruso will take you from me." My tears fell harder, because for the first time, I realized something terrifying. If Alexander killed Luca, I would hate him forever. But if Luca killed Alexander, I would break. Either way, I was doomed. The first message arrived 3 days later. A single envelope slipped through the estate's iron gates. Inside a photograph. I as a child, barefoot, laughing, my hair wild, my mother's arms around me. And beside us, blurred half in shadow, a boy. Dark-eyed, solemn, his hand clutching mine. On the back, a single line scrawled in ink. "Blood remembers." I pressed the photo to my chest, my tears staining its edges. Luca was real. He remembered, and he wanted me. When Alexander saw the photo, his fury burned hotter than fire. He threw the glass in his hand against the wall, shards scattering like stars. "He dares," Alexander hissed, his voice trembling with rage. "He dares to use you against me." I stood frozen, the photo clutched tight in my hands. "He's not using me," I whispered. "He's reaching for me." Alexander turned, his eyes blazing. "No, he is reaching through you. You are the crown he wants. You are the blade he will wield against me. Do not fool yourself, Naomi. He does not see a sister. He considers a weapon." His words cut deep, carving doubt into the fragile hope I held. But still my heart whispered, "Blood remembers." That night, I stood on the balcony, the photo hidden in the folds of my robe. The ocean churned below, black and endless, mirroring the storm inside me. Alexander appeared behind me, silent as a shadow. His hand brushed my shoulder, warm, steady, unyielding. "You're trembling," he murmured. I swallowed hard. I don't know what to believe anymore. His lips brushed my temple, his voice low. "Believe this, I will not let him take you. Not Delgado, not Caruso, not even your brother." Tears slid down my cheeks, hot and silent. "And if I want to go to him," his arms tightened around me, his breath hot against my ear, "then I will chain you to me until you remember who you belong to." The words should have terrified me. But what terrified me more was how my body leaned into his, seeking his warmth, even as my heart screamed. When I closed my eyes that night, I dreamed again of Luca. But this time, his hand was stained with blood, and I could not tell whose it was. The storm that lived inside me finally demanded release. The photograph had burned in my hands for days, a memory of a childhood I had almost forgotten, a shadow of a boy they now claimed was my brother. Blood remembers, Luca had written. But when I pressed the picture to my chest at night and closed my eyes, another memory surfaced instead. My mother's voice. Beware the cross. And Alexander's. I gave the order. The words echoed until they carved me hollow. Tonight, I could no longer keep them buried. I would demand the truth tonight, whether it broke me or him. I found him in the study. The firelight painted the room in gold and shadow. Alexander stood with his back to me, one hand braced against the mantel, the other holding a glass of scotch he had not yet lifted to his lips. His posture was rigid, carved from steel, yet I sensed the storm beneath it. He heard me before I spoke. He always did, his voice low and rough, cut through the silence. You shouldn't be here. My throat tightened. Then why does it feel like I've never left? He turned slowly, and when his eyes met mine, their weight nearly crushed me. Steel gray flecked with stormlight, sharp enough to strip me bare. What do you want, Naomi? He asked. The name trembled on his tongue. Possessive, dangerous mine. I lifted the letter opener I had hidden behind my back. Its silver edge caught the firelight, a fragile blade against a man forged from violence. My hand shook, but I raised it to his throat all the same. I want the truth. Something flickered in his gaze for the first time. Not fear, never fear, but something quieter. A shadow of memory, perhaps, or guilt. The truth. He repeated, his voice softer now. Are you ready for it? Tears stung my eyes, fury burning hotter. I know enough already. You killed her. You killed my mother. The blade pressed harder against his skin, a bead of blood welling where metal kissed flesh. But he didn't flinch. He didn't move at all. Yes, he said at last, his voice stripped of armor. I gave the order. The world tilted. I thought hearing it again would make me stronger. I thought it would turn my rage into clarity. But instead, the admission hollowed me out, leaving only trembling hands and broken breath. Why, I whispered. Why her? His jaw tightened because she was going to run. To Caruso. To deliver you to them. I shook my head violently, the blade trembling in my hand. No, you don't know that. His eyes burned hotter. I know everything, Naomi. I know the deals she made, the whispers she carried, the danger she dragged behind her like smoke. Do you think Delgado or Luca would have spared you? They would have chained you, used you, broken you. She would have handed you over to them, and I could not allow it. Tears slid down my cheeks, hot and bitter. So you decided you had the right to take her from me. His breath hitched, his voice rougher now. I decided I had the right to keep you alive. The silence stretched heavy as stone. The fire cracked. The ocean roared beyond the walls, and neither of us moved. My blade trembled against his throat, my heart racing with grief and fury. You stole everything, I whispered, my voice breaking. You stole her. You stole my life. And now you've stolen me. His gaze softened slightly like a storm, easing for a moment's breath. No, he murmured. I claimed you. There's a difference. I let out a broken laugh, raw with pain. Claimed me, like property, like territory. You don't love me, Alexander. You only know how to own. His hand rose slowly and deliberately, until his fingers wrapped around my wrist, not to break or force me, but to steady me. His touch was warm, searing, holding me, even as the blade pressed harder against his skin. He admitted that I don't know how to love, and his voice was low and rough. But I know how to burn. And I burn for you. The blade slipped from my fingers, clattering to the floor. The sound echoed louder than thunder. Before I could move and breathe, his hand cupped my face, his thumb brushing the tears from my cheeks, his forehead lowered to mine, his breath hot and ragged against my lips. "I will never be sorry," he whispered. "Not for saving you. Not for keeping you. Not even for this." His mouth claimed mine before I could answer, before I could scream or sob or surrender. The kiss was fire and steel, fury and hunger. My hands pushed against his chest, striking not to wound, but to survive the storm of him. And then, traitorously, they curled into his shirt, dragging him closer. The study blurred. The fire roared louder. The world narrowed to his body, pressing mine against the wall, his lips devouring every denial I tried to speak. His hands roamed with the ferocity of a man who had fought empires, now fighting only himself. I hated him. I wanted him. Both truths collided until they were indistinguishable, until my sobs turned into gasps, until his name broke from my lips like a prayer and a curse all at once. When he lifted me, when the desk caught me, when his mouth trailed down the column of my throat, I knew I had already lost the war against myself. Because I let him. Because part of me needed him as much as I needed air. Hours later, the fire had burned low shadows stretching long across the study. I lay tangled in his arms, my body spent, my heart racing. I should have left. I should have taken the blade from the floor and driven it into his chest while he slept. But I didn't. Instead, I listened to his breathing, steady and deep, as though he trusted me not to run, as though he trusted me not to kill him. And that trust broke me more than his lies ever could. The sunlight was pale when I woke, and the fire was embers. Alexander stood at the window shirt, half-buttoned, his hair mussed from sleep. He looked less like a king, less like a captor, and more like a man tired, restless, uncertain. He turned when he felt my gaze. "You should rest." I sat up slowly, pulling the silk sheet around me. "Do you ever regret it?" His brow furrowed. "What?" "Killing her." My voice cracked. "Taking my mother from me." For a long moment, silence stretched. His jaw tightened. His eyes darkened. But his voice was steady when he finally spoke. "No. I regret what it did to you. I regret the hatred in your eyes. But her, no. Because if she had lived, you would not." I pressed a trembling hand to my lips, tears stinging again. His certainty was unbearable. His devotion, twisted as it was painful. And yet some part of me believed him. That evening, another message arrived. This time, not a photograph. A letter, written in careful, deliberate script. "Naomi," it read. "You carry Bandari blood as I do. You are my sister, though Cross would see you as nothing more than his possession. Come to me, and I will give you the truth he stole. Come to me, and I will provide you with freedom." Signed, Luca. My chest tightened as I read it, tears falling onto the page. Freedom, truth, a brother. And yet, I felt Alexander's presence, silent and steady behind me. His shadow stretched long across the floor, his eyes unreadable as they fell on the letter in my trembling hands. "Lies," he said coldly. But my heart whispered, "Blood remembers." That night, as I lay in the darkness, torn between the two men who claimed me, one by chains, one by blood, I realized the truth that terrified me most. No matter what I chose, I would lose. If I went to Luca, I might find freedom, but I might also find another cage. If I stayed with Alexander, I would remain chained, but chained to the only man who had ever set my body and soul on fire. And when I pressed a hand to my chest, trembling with confusion, I knew the most terrifying truth of all. That love and hate were not opposites at all. Maybe they were the same fire, and Alexander Cross had already lit it inside me. The chandeliers burned brighter than fire that night. The great hall of the Cross estate glittered with gold and smoke filled with men and women dressed in silk and velvet, their laughter sharp as knives. It was not a banquet. It was a battlefield dressed in crystal. And I, Naomi Cross, Naomi Bandari, was the weapon on display. Alexander's hand pressed lightly against the small of my back as we entered, his touch guiding and warning. The room hushed for a breath, all eyes turning. Their whispers rose like smoke. The Bandari girl, the wife, the queen in chains. My gown clung to me in crimson silk, my throat heavy with diamonds he had chosen. Every step echoed against marble steady, despite the storm inside me. I kept my chin high, even as my stomach twisted, because weakness here would be blood in the water. And wolves always smelled blood. The evening unfolded in fragments, laughter over crystal glasses, false smiles hiding sharpened teeth. Delgado moved among the crowd like a serpent draped in silk, his gaze lingering on me too long, his words dripping with charm, meant for Alexander to hear. When he finally approached, the music swelled, violins slicing the air. He bowed, his eyes gleaming with amusement. "Senora Cross," he said smoothly, offering his hand. "A dance." Before I could answer, Alexander's grip tightened on my waist. His smile was faint, sharp. "She doesn't dance." Delgado's smirk deepened. "With the right partner, she might." The challenge crackled between them like thunder. I stood frozen, my pulse racing, the weight of every gaze pressing against my skin. Finally, I shook my head. "No." My voice was steady, though my knees trembled. Delgado inclined his head, his smile venomous. "Of course. Another time." But his eyes promised more. As the night deepened, the air grew thicker, heavy with tension. I could feel Alexander watching Delgado, his body taut with restraint. His hand never left mine beneath the table, his grip firm, possessive, reminding me with every pulse mine. I hated it. I hated how my pulse leapt at his touch. I hated how safe I felt with his fire burning beside me, even when his fire was also my cage. And then the glass shattered. The sound split the hall like thunder. For a heartbeat, the room froze. Then chaos erupted. A shot rang out sharp and merciless. Screams rose, crystals shattered further, and guards lunged forward. Before I could move, Alexander's body slammed into mine, dragging me down. The floor rushed up, marble cold against my cheek. His arm shielded me, his weight pressing me into the ground. Another shot cracked the air. Pain tore through me, white-hot, searing. My breath caught in my throat. Blood. My blood. I gasped, clutching my side where fire burned beneath silk. The room blurred, voices echoing in waves I couldn't reach. My vision swam, but through the chaos I saw Alexander. His eyes burned hotter than fire, his face carved from fury and fear. He shouted orders I couldn't hear, his hand pressing against my wound, his body shielding mine as guards returned fire. The world tilted. I felt weightless, drifting, but his voice tethered me. "Stay with me," he growled low and rough. "Do you hear me, Naomi? Stay with me." I tried to speak, but blood filled my throat. My fingers clutched at his shirt, my tears mixing with crimson. For once, He wasn't the storm. He was the anchor. And I held on. The gunfire faded. The hall emptied of laughter and knives, leaving only smoke, blood, and broken glass. Delgado had vanished into the night, his smile lingering in the chaos like a ghost. Alexander carried me from the hall in his arms, his jaw tight, his eyes blazing. Guards parted before him. Servants gasped, but no one dared speak. He didn't stop until we reached his chamber. He laid me gently on the bed, his hands already stained red with my blood. "Get the doctor," he barked to his men. "Now." I clutched his hand, my voice weak, trembling. "Don't. Leave me." For a moment the mask cracked. His eyes glistened with something I had never seen before, fear. "Never," he whispered, his lips brushing my forehead. "I will never leave you." The doctor arrived, his hands steady, his words clipped. The bullet had grazed me, tearing through flesh, but missing the heart of me. Pain seared as he worked, but I bit back every cry, refusing to give the wolves that satisfaction. Through it all, Alexander never left my side. His hand held mine, his voice a low growl of command when my strength faltered. Silence fell heavy when it was over, when the wound was bound and the doctor dismissed. Alexander sat at the edge of the bed, his shirt torn and stained with my blood. His hands shook faintly, though his gaze burned steady. "You could have died," he said, his voice raw. I swallowed hard, my throat aching. But I didn't. His hand brushed my hair back, his thumb tracing the curve of my cheek with aching tenderness, because I was there. I closed my eyes, tears slipping free. "You can't protect me from everything." His jaw tightened. "Watch me." That night, sleep came fitfully torn by pain and dreams. I drifted in and out of consciousness, constantly waking to the weight of his presence beside me. He never left, not once. When dawn broke, pale and fragile, I opened my eyes to find him still there. His head rested against the bed frame, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion. But he was awake, watching me, as though if he blinked, I might disappear. Why, I whispered, my voice fragile. Why risk everything for me? His gaze softened, his voice low, rough. "Because without you, none of it matters." The words struck deeper than any blade. I wanted to deny them. I tried to call them another chain, another manipulation. But the truth in his eyes was too raw, too bare. And for the first time, I wondered if love could exist in chains. The estate shifted after that night. Guards tripled, doors locked tighter. Every corridor bristled with weapons and whispers. The world outside burned with rumors. Delgado plotting Luca Caruso, rising wars whispered in shadows. But inside, the only war that mattered was between my heart and my rage. Because every time I looked at Alexander, I remembered his body shielding mine, his voice demanding I stay alive. And every time I remembered, my hatred cracked. Danger had bound us tighter than silk ever could. And I feared what that meant. I stood before the mirror days later, tracing the bandage beneath my gown. My reflection was pale. My eyes shadowed, my lips trembling. I looked fragile, breakable. But when Alexander entered, his gaze held none of that. "You are not weak," he said, his voice firm. "You are fire, and they will learn that if they dare touch you again." I shook my head, my throat tight. "I am not fire. I'm just a girl who keeps bleeding in your world." His hand cupped my face, lifting it until my eyes met his. "No, Naomi. You are the only reason this world still burns." And when his lips found mine again, when his arms wrapped around me, I realized the terrifying truth. That maybe I believed him. The night of the banquet would haunt me forever. The shattered glass, the screams, the blood soaking into silk. The way Alexander's body had covered mine, the way his voice had dragged me back from the edge. But what haunted me most was not the pain. It was how I clung to him, even as the world burned. And in the quiet after, when I pressed my hand to the bandage, trembling with the weight of everything I knew, this fire would not go out. Because love and hate were no longer enemies. They were the same flame. And Alexander Cross had already set me ablaze. Pain became my shadow. It lingered beneath every breath, sharp and aching, a reminder of the bullet that had kissed my skin and the blood that had spilled across Alexander's hands. I woke each morning to the burn of it, to the weight of bandages wrapped tight against my ribs, and to the memory of the banquet, the shattered glass, the screams, the fire in his eyes as he shielded me. The estate moved differently after that night. Guards swelled like tides, shadows doubled in every corridor, and voices hushed when I entered. The air itself felt heavier, bristling with tension. And Alexander? Alexander was no longer merely a storm contained in flesh. He was at war. I saw it first in his eyes. The night after the banquet, he sat beside my bed, his jaw clenched, his gaze fixed on the fire. His shirt was still stained with my blood, though days had passed. His men had urged him to change to rest, but he hadn't moved. When I stirred, his eyes turned to me, dark, sharp, burning. "They touched you," he said, voice low, ragged. "They bled you." I swallowed hard, my throat tight. I survived. His hand closed into a fist on his knee. "That is not enough." The next morning, I woke to whispers. Servants moved quickly, their eyes lowered, their voices trembling, as they carried rumors through the halls. Whispers of bodies found in alleys of warehouses, painted red of Delgado's men, vanishing into shadows that never returned them. When I asked, no one would answer. But when Alexander returned to my chamber that evening, the scent of smoke clung to him. His shirt was fresh, his tie immaculate, but his knuckles were raw, his eyes darker than I had ever seen. "You killed them," I whispered. He didn't deny it. "They aimed for you. That was their last mistake." My stomach twisted. "How many?" "As many as it took." His tone was too calm, like a blade laid flat, but sharpened to the edge. Tears burned hot in my eyes. "You can't slaughter the world every time someone looks at me." His gaze locked on mine, unwavering. "Watch me." That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the canopy above my bed, the ache in my side drowned by the pain in my chest. I remembered his hands on me at the banquet, steady, protective. I remembered the way his voice had anchored me to life. And I remembered the corpses whispered about in the halls, proof of his devotion written in blood. Love should not feel like this, but then neither should hate. Days bled together. My body healed slowly, but the world outside the estate grew sharper, more dangerous. Luca Caruso's name spread like fire through whispers. Bandari blood alive, claiming thrones in shadows. Delgado circled closer, his provocations bolder, his hand always reaching for what was not his. And in the center of it all, Alexander stood immovable. He attended meetings with council members whose eyes flicked between me and him like vultures measuring their prey. He made calls in languages I didn't understand, his voice clipped, decisive. He returned to me each night with his shoulders taut, his hands unsteady, his gaze burning only for me. And though I wanted to scream at him to curse his cruelty, I found myself waiting for his return. One evening, I forced myself from bed and wandered the halls. Pain slowed me, but the silence was unbearable, and I needed air. I followed the corridors until I reached the balcony that overlooked the sea. The night was sharp with salt and wind. The ocean churned black and endless, its roar echoing the storm inside me. "Naomi." His voice. I turned to find him there, his presence filling the balcony, his gaze sweeping me with fire and restraint. "You shouldn't be walking yet," he said. I lifted my chin, ignoring the ache in my ribs. I couldn't breathe in there. His steps closed the distance between us. He stopped just inches away, his cologne wrapping around me like smoke. His hand hovered near my waist, as though to steady me, but he didn't touch. "You're trembling," he murmured. From pain, I lied. His eyes burned hotter, seeing through me. "No, from me." My chest rose and fell too quickly, my heart betraying me even as my lips pressed into denial. "I hate you." His hand lifted fingers, brushing a curl from my cheek. His touch was soft, almost reverent. "I know." His voice dropped, rough, aching. "And I would rather your hate than your absence." I should have pushed him away. Instead, I leaned into his warmth. For a moment, the ocean roared, the wind lashed, but none of it mattered. For a moment, I let myself be what I had sworn I wouldn't be his. His lips brushed mine, tentative, then fiercer when I didn't resist. The kiss was fire and fury, hunger and despair. My hands clutched at his shirt, pulling him closer, even as tears slid down my cheeks. Because I knew what this was. This was not love. It was survival. It was a surrender. It was chains disguised as warmth. And yet I wanted it. When we broke apart, his forehead rested against mine, his breath ragged. "I will destroy them all," he whispered. "Delgado Caruso. Every man who dares breathe your name. I will salt the earth with their bones before I let them touch you again." Tears stung my eyes. "And when there's no one left, when you've burned everything, what will you have then?" His gaze held mine, fierce and unyielding. "You." The word cut deeper than any blade. Later, I returned to my chamber alone, my body trembling, my heart torn between fury and fire. I pressed a hand to my bandaged side, feeling the ache of the wound, the ache of him. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw myself into the sea and let the waves decide my fate. But when I closed my eyes, I saw his face at the banquet, his arms shielding me, his voice demanding I live, and I hated myself for needing him. The retaliation didn't stop. More whispers filled the halls. Delgado's lieutenants found dead. Caruso's shipments burned, safe houses turned to ash. The city trembled beneath Alexander's wrath, every corner painted with warnings in blood. As I passed the library one night, I overheard him speaking to his men. "She is untouchable," he growled. "If anyone doubts it, remind them." My knees weakened. My chest tightened. Because I realized then what it meant to belong to him. It meant the world would never dare touch me. But it also meant the world would drown in blood to keep me his. That night I dreamed of Luca again. He stood in shadows, his eyes sharp, his smile bitter. "He cages you with fire," he said. "I will free you with truth." When I woke, the sheets were damp with tears, and Alexander's arm was heavy around me, his warmth pressing against my back, his breath steady against my skin. The cage had never felt tighter. The next evening, I confronted him. "You can't keep killing for me," I said, my voice shaking. His gaze darkened. "I don't kill for you. I kill because they dared to touch what's mine." I flinched, fury rising. "I am not yours." He stepped closer, his hand catching my jaw, tilting my face until my eyes met his. His voice dropped, rough, raw. "You are even when you deny it. Even when you hate me, even when you dream of running. You are mine, Naomi, and the sooner you accept it, the less it will hurt." Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to look away. "And if I never accept it?" His thumb brushed my trembling lips, his gaze burning. Then I'll spend the rest of my life breaking every chain until you do." The ocean roared outside, relentless. Inside, the storm between us grew sharper, fiercer, more consuming. I hated him. I needed him. And as I pressed my hand to the wound at my side, still tender, still healing, I realized the truth I didn't want to face. The price of his protection was blood, and it was already too late to decide if I would pay it. The sea was restless again. It beat against the cliffs with the fury of something caged too long, every wave a fist demanding release. I stood at the balcony, my robe whipping in the wind, my breath sharp as glass. Beneath the bandages at my side, the wound still throbbed, a reminder of the banquet of the bullet that could have ended me, of Alexander's arms around me. His voice still echoed in my ears. "You are mine." But another voice haunted me now, softer, sharper. "Blood remembers." Luca's letter lay hidden beneath my pillow. I had read it a dozen times, tracing the letters with trembling fingers, searching for lies, truth, for anything that could explain the hollow ache in my chest. Sister, freedom, truth. Words Alexander never gave me, and tonight I would learn what they truly meant. It began with a whisper. The guards were doubled, the gates locked, every shadow watched. Yet somehow the envelope found its way into my chamber, slipped beneath the door, quiet as breath. I froze, staring at the paper as though it might burn me. My heart hammered as I bent to pick it up, my fingers trembling. No crest this time, no weight of formality, only my name scrawled across the front. Naomi. Inside, a single page. Tomorrow night. Midnight. The gardens. Alone. No signature. None needed. I knew who had written it. All day I carried the letter close to my skin, hidden in the folds of my gown. Every step through the estate felt heavier, every glance from the guards sharper, every brush of Alexander's eyes unbearable. He knew something was shifting. He always did. His gaze lingered too long, his questions sharper than usual. "You're quiet," he said that evening, his hand resting against my waist as though to anchor me. I forced a smile, fragile and brittle. "Just tired." He studied me, his eyes narrowing, but said nothing more. And for the first time, I was grateful for his silence. Because if he pressed harder and asked the right question, the truth would have spilled from me like blood. Midnight came with silver moonlight and the sound of the sea. I slipped from my chamber, my bare feet silent against the marble, my robe wrapped tight around me. Every corridor was a labyrinth of shadows and locked doors, but I had memorized the guards' patterns, rotations, and cracks in Alexander's fortress. The gardens stretched wide, and dark lanterns flickering faintly among roses that glistened with dew. The air smelled of salt and earth, sharp against my tongue. And there, beneath the arch of ivy, he waited. Luca. For a moment, I could only stare. He was taller than I expected, his frame lean, but strong, his suit dark and immaculate. His eyes, my eyes, gleamed in the moonlight, sharp and haunted, too familiar and too strange all at once. "Naomi," he said softly. The sound of my name in his voice broke me. Tears stung my eyes, my chest tightening. "You're real," I whispered. His lips curved faintly, though his eyes remained solemn. "I've always been real. They just made you forget." I stepped closer, my breath trembling. "You're my brother." "Yes." His hand lifted hesitant, as though afraid I might shatter. His fingers brushed mine, warm and trembling. "And you're my sister, my blood." The words sliced through me. Blood. Bandari. For a moment we stood there, breathing each other in, two ghosts reunited beneath the moon. But shadows moved quickly, and his gaze hardened. "He'll never let you go," Luca said quietly. "Cross. He will keep you, until you are nothing but his. My throat tightened. He saved me. His eyes darkened. He killed her. Our mother. Did he tell you that tears slipped down my cheeks? Yes. And still you stay. His voice was raw, filled with disbelief and something like sorrow. You don't understand, I whispered. It isn't that simple. Of course it is, he snapped, then softened at my flinch. His hand closed over mine again, firmer this time. Naomi, listen to me. He cages you because you are Power Bandari blood. With you, he strengthens his empire. Without him, you could claim your own. Our own. I shook my head violently. I don't want an empire. I want what his eyes burned. Freedom, safety, love. You'll find none of that in him. You'll only find chains. My chest ached, my tears blurring. And with you, with me, he said fiercely, you'll find truth. You'll find family. You'll find the life they stole from us. The wind lashed through the garden, scattering petals across the marble path. For a moment I wavered, caught between fire and shadow, between the man who had saved me in chains and the brother who promised freedom in blood. I don't know what to believe, I whispered. Luca's gaze softened, his thumb brushing away a tear. Believe me, blood remembers. Always. He leaned forward, pressing his forehead to mine, tender and protective. For a heartbeat, I felt safe. But safety was always an illusion. The crack of a branch shattered the moment. I froze. Luca's eyes narrowed. And then I felt the shift in the air, the weight of a presence I knew better than my own breath. Naomi. Alexander's voice cut through the night like a blade. I spun, my heart slamming against my ribs. He stood at the garden's edge, his suit dark, his eyes darker. His men lingered behind him like shadows, silent and watchful. But his gaze was only on me, on us. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Alexander stepped forward, and each stride was measured as dangerous. His jaw was taut, his eyes burning hotter than fire. Step away from her, he growled. Luca's arm tightened around me, his voice sharp. She's not yours to command. Alexander's gaze flicked to his hand on mine, and something feral flashed across his face. His voice dropped low and lethal. I will tear that hand from you. My breath came in gasps, panic rising as the two men closed in the fire, and the shadow both mine, both claiming me. Stop, I cried, shoving between them. My body trembled, my wound burning, but I stood tall, my hands pressed against both their chests. For once they both froze. Please, I whispered, tears streaming. Please don't make me choose. But the choice was already there, carved into every breath. Luca's gaze softened as he looked down at me. You don't have to stay in his chains, Naomi. Come with me, tonight. We'll leave, and he'll never touch you again. Alexander's hand caught my arm, his grip iron. She isn't leaving. She belongs here with me. Belongs, Luca spat. You mean imprisoned? Alexander's eyes locked on mine, fierce, unyielding. Safe. Tears blurred everything, my heart cracking beneath their weight. I wanted to scream, run, vanish into the sea and let it claim me. But instead I whispered the only truth I knew. I don't know who I am anymore. Silence stretched. The sea roared. The garden trembled. And in that silence I saw the truth. Blood and fire. Chains and freedom. Love and hate. No matter which I chose, I would burn. Alexander pulled me closer, his lips brushing my ear, his voice raw. He will use you. He will break you. Stay, and I will protect you. Always. Luca's hand tightened on mine, his eyes pleading. He will never love you, Naomi. Not truly. Come with me, and you'll finally be free. And between them, I broke. Because I wanted both. Because I trusted neither. The sound of guards approaching shattered the standoff. Alexander's men spilled into the garden rifles raised. Luca stepped back into the shadows, his hand slipping from mine. But his eyes held mine until the last second, burning with promise. This isn't over, he said. And then he was gone. Alexander turned to me, his chest rising and falling like a storm barely contained. His hands caught my face, tilting it up, his eyes searing into mine. You went to him. His voice shook ragged. I trembled, tears streaming. He's my brother. He's Caruso. His grip tightened, not cruel but desperate. And he will not have you. His mouth crashed onto mine, brutal, claiming fire against tears. I gasped into the kiss, torn between fury and longing, between chains and blood. When he finally pulled away, his forehead rested against mine, his breath ragged. You are mine, Naomi, he whispered, even if the whole world burns for it. And in that moment, with my brother's shadow still lingering and Alexander's fire consuming me, I realized the terrifying truth. The world already had. By morning, the garden had forgotten we bled there. Dew jeweled the roses, lantern glass was wiped clean, and the path where Luca's shadow had stood looked innocent as porcelain. Only I remembered the heat in the air when Alexander said mine, how my brother's fingers had tightened around my wrist, as though blood alone could hold me. The estate moved, as if bracing for a storm that refused to break. Guards walked in pairs. Radios murmured. Doors that had once opened for me now required a glance from men who would lay down their lives before they let me pass, unaccompanied. The world beyond the cliffs sent up rumors like smoke warehouses blackened to ribs, bank accounts frozen by invisible hands, allies taking longer to answer Alexander's calls. Power does not vanish. It shifts its weight. I felt the change in the house around me. Alexander felt it too. He didn't say it. He never did. But the edge of his voice cut closer to the bone, and when they found mine, his eyes were bright with the pain of a king who would rather set his throne on fire than watch it topple. I, who had been no one, became the fulcrum around which empires tilted. The package appeared at noon, a square of black vellum, bound with a ribbon the color of congealed wine. It sat like a small, sleeping animal at the bottom of the steps. A guard reached for it with gloved hands. A second guard stopped him, called for a third. The air bristled. Bomb techs, dogs, mirrors. When they finally cut the ribbon, nothing happened. No smoke, no teeth. Only paper. Old, thick smelling of iron. Inside lay a ring. It was heavier than it should have been. The gold was dull, as if it had been pulled from a throat of earth and had not yet decided to shine for the sky. A crest was carved into it, the rose bound in a chain, the ghost of a crown above its thorned head. Beneath the ring were 3 letters inked with a hand I knew from the journal pages that had taught me to fear the cross. NBC. Naomi Bandari Caruso. Alexander said, "Don't touch that," lowly cutting across the hall like a blade. I was already cradling it in my palm. His gaze snapped to my hand, anger. Yes, but something like grief beneath it. It's a trap. It's documentation, I said. It's recognition. It's bait. His men fanned the steps. I turned the ring in my fingers, and the light found it, and at last it lit the carved edges until the rose seemed to exhale. Beneath it lay a letter on thick ivory decal sealed in wax with the same crest. I broke it before Alexander could speak. To the last of our name it read, The Book of Names lists you as primogen. The old oath calls you home. Come to the house at Esplanade when the moon burns white. Bring the ring. Speak the 3 vows. Claim the throne that was stolen from us. Beneath the words, a sigil. Behind that, a line scrawled in darker ink. Blood remembers. L. I could feel Alexander reading the words over my shoulder. Feel the fury rising in him like heat from a black road. When I lowered the page, he was already speaking to his men, snapping orders that moved silently down the hall like ripples in glass. No one comes near the gate without my clearance. Sweep every line, every account. Forensics on the paper. Ink analysis. If he wants her to walk into that house, we burn the house first. The guards moved. The paper stiffened in my shaking hands. I looked up. You won't burn it. I will burn anyone who tries to claim you. He said quietly, you will burn my name watching the blow land. His jaw flexed, as if holding back something that would hurt us both. Your name is already mine. Bandari, I said, and the sound shocked us both, how a birth name can slice open a mouth that has only ever learned to ask for a glass of water, not a kingdom. By evening, the house hummed with threat. I was summoned to the council chamber, though no council had been invited. Alexander sat at the long table the way a lion sits in dry grass sun, in his main eyes half-lidded, but ready. Screens waited where men usually did. The first flickered alive. Delgado's smile appeared cigarette smoke curling into the pixels like handwriting. Cross, he said. Your favorite painting is missing a signature, so I've brought mine. I'm not a gallery, Alexander said. I'm a graveyard. Delgado laughed, delighted. Then bury me. But before you do, consider this. He lifted a small black book, old and broken at the spine. I knew it without knowing the Book of Names. I felt its absence in my hands, the way one feels the lack of a tooth. One cannot stop licking. Esplanade, Delgado said lightly. The house, the vows. Your girl doesn't need your signature to become what she already is. All she needs is hers. The second screen brightened. Luca's face appeared without ceremony, the light on his cheekbones sharp as a knife. He did not look at Alexander. He looked at me. He said sister as if the word were a hand extended across fire. They recognized me because I bled for them. They will recognize you because your blood is older than the men who think they hold the pen. I swallowed. The room smelled of smoke and polished wood, and something new, the scent of a door opening on a colder wind. Why now? My voice sounded steady. I did not feel steady. Why call me now? Why not when I was sweeping floors and sleeping on a mattress that remembered every stranger more clearly than it remembered me? Because they didn't know you were alive, Luca said. Because he and here, for the first time he looked at Alexander, did what he always does, wrote his name over the truth. Delgado's smile widened. He also lies beautifully, but a lie doesn't change a lineage. Stand in that house, Naomi. Wear the ring. Speak, and watch the men who bow to him bow to you. Alexander's hand flattened against the table. Turn this off. No, I said. It was the first time I had used the word to him like a wall he could not walk through. He turned his head slowly, like a man considering an animal he had always assumed would come when he called. No, he repeated softly, and for a moment I thought he might laugh. I slid the ring onto my finger. It was too loose. It was too heavy. It knew me. The room changed. Not the walls, not the men, the gravity. It shifted as if the floor had been on a slant all this time, and the angle had finally mercifully corrected. The guards at the door, cross men trained to blink only when permitted, blinked. One moved his weight from one foot to the other, a strange, almost kneeling tilt. The old butler, who had never looked me in the eye, bowed before he remembered to ask permission to bow. They had all learned the Bandari crest in stories that did not make it into the daylight. Their grandfathers had served a name higher than the men who had murdered it. Their bones remembered. Alexander saw it. Of course he did. Something tore across his face. Fury, desire, fear, a pride that was not his, then was gone. "You think the ring will save you," he said to me low. "You think a word will keep you from the wolves." "No," I said. "I think a word will wake them." "You want them awake. I want them to listen." Delgado flicked ash into a crystal tray. I knew he had placed there to annoy us. "She is learning the difference between being a crown and being crowned," he purred. "Cross, isn't she beautiful when she sharpens?" Luca spoke over him. "There is a ceasefire written into the old oath," he said, eyes on mine. "Once the primogen calls, the house blades go to scabbards until the blood speaks. If you call it, he cannot raise a hand." Alexander leaned back in his chair, as if distance could make the words less accurate. "I can raise both hands," he said. "I can close them. On me, yes," I said, "but not on them. Not if I speak." We stared at each other across the table, where so much had been negotiated without me. Every muscle in his body argued for violence. Every law in his bloodstream argued for control. The part of him I had touched with my mouth and my worst prayers argued for neither, and I could see him hating that part most. "You call that house," he said finally, "and you walk into a room full of men who would hang your skin like a banner if it gave them rain. You call it." His voice dropped, "and I cannot stand before you." "I know," I said, "and I'm asking you not to." "Why?" "So they see that I can stand alone." Silence. Delgado's smile thinned. He had wanted a spectacle. Luca's gaze warmed. He had wanted a queen. Alexander exhaled slowly, as if air itself were treachery. 72 hours, I said, before anyone could speak. No bullets, no bombs, no midnight deliveries that arrive with teeth. I call the house at white moon. Until then, every man who answers to you or to him lowers his weapons. Delgado fanned smoke with his fingers. "My men are artists. They do not lower their hands for long. Break them if they rise," I said, and surprised myself with the knife in my voice, but not before. "Blood will be spilled when I say so, not because one of you needed to hear yourselves roar." Luca's head tipped approval. "Agreed." All eyes went to Alexander. He watched me as if measuring the weight of ropes against silk. The vein at his temple beat like a secret drum. The words sounded like something wrenched from an iron hinge when he spoke. 72 hours, he said. "If anyone touches you, the clock ends. If anyone touches anyone who wears my crest," I countered, and the clock ended. His mouth tightened. The ring pressed a circle of cold into my skin. I did not look away. "Agreed," he said. Delgado clapped once, slowly. How civilized. How doomed. Both screens went dark. We were alone again. Not alone. We had never been alone, not in rooms, beds, or our bodies. Men and ghosts and promises and graves. They pressed in until the air fought back. Alexander stood. I expected a command, a threat, a vow. He walked to me instead, stopped where the shadow of the table cut his shoes in half, and spoke in a voice I had never heard from him, too quiet to be strategy, too careful to be a warning. "I can keep you safe when you are near me," he said. "I do not know how to keep you safe when you step into a room that requires you to be lit on all sides." "I have been lit before," I said. "I am still here." "I lit you," he answered, and the honesty of it loosened something in my chest that had been breaking steadily since the aeroplane window first showed me the dark, moving like a river. "You did," I said. "And then you put out the fire when it threatened to leave you behind." His hand rose, stopped midair. He lowered it. "I will station men on the street. I will." "You will not follow me into the house," I said. "You gave your word." He swallowed, and the movement seemed to cost him. "Then take something of mine," he said. "So I'm inside the room, even if my body is not." "What?" He slid a thin blade from his sleeve, a band of steel no wider than my thumb, its edge shaped like a question. He turned it so the light found a small engraving near the hilt, the cross sigil cut in lines so fine they looked like a vein. He said, "You will not cut alone if you are called to cut." I took it. It weighed less than a lie, more than a promise. Our fingers touched. Heat crept up the inside of my wrist like a memory. His gaze dropped to the ring, then rose to my face with something like a vow broken and remade. "You are not a crown," he said. "You are what crowns are made from." I left before the words could scar and save me both. Night fell early, as if the sky had accepted our deadline and was already hurrying us toward it. The house at Esplanade would not open until the moon whitened like bone. I had hours and no time at all. In the corridor outside my chamber, a figure straightened from the wall. Not a crossguard, I knew their weight and their careful stillness. This one smelled like salt and old leather. The scar across his brow made his eyes look like a storm remembering how to see. He had once brought me tea when I could not eat. He had once said, "My sister had a laugh like yours," and then left the room before I could ask where she had gone. "Don't flinch," he said. Now so softly, I almost thought the words were the wind. "I'm not." He looked at my hand, the ring, the knife, and then beyond me to the dark garden, to the invisible road that led off the cliff and curved up again, where men who believed in blood built their houses. "There's a back gate," he said. "It sticks if you don't know the trick. I'll show you." Why, I asked. "Because I have served names my whole life." His mouth twisted. "I'm tired of men. I want to serve a woman who knows she's a storm, not a chandelier." I felt the laugh rise and die in my throat. "And if he asks where I went, I'll tell him the truth," he said. "You went to speak." And it was time someone listened. He stepped aside. The hall watched us both silent. I walked. At the end of the corridor, the night opened its mouth. The back gate did stick. He showed me the trick: heel forward, then lift as if coaxing an old animal to its feet. The hinge sighed like something that had been forgiven. The path beyond was narrow, lined with jasmine so sweet it made the air taste of old weddings and new graves. At the crest of the drive I stopped. The sea below threw its fists at the cliff and missed again and again and again. I slipped the ring higher on my finger. The blade lay cool against my forearm, where I had hidden it beneath my sleeve. The night smelled like rain was deciding. Behind me, somewhere inside the house, a man I hated, wanted, feared, and believed stood in a room where he could not come after me. Ahead of me, a brother I had not met until I needed him, waited in a house that had decided it remembered me. Between them was me. I breathed. Then I went to call the blood. The moon was white as bone. It hovered above the city like a witness, pale and merciless, lighting the path before me, as if to say there is no turning back now. The house of Esplanade rose from the quarter like an old cathedral, its iron gates carved with roses, its windows stained with shadows, and time had not touched it. It had waited, and it was waiting for me. The ring pressed against my skin, too heavy for one finger, too cold for blood. The knife Alexander had given me lay hidden beneath my sleeve, its edge sharp enough to remind me of the truth. No vow, no crest, no brother would keep me safe if I faltered. I was no longer the invisible girl on a plane. I was Bhandari blood, and blood had finally come to collect its debt. The doors opened without a sound. Inside the chamber was vast, its ceiling ribbed with beams blackened by centuries of smoke. Candles lined the walls, their flames casting restless shadows across portraits of men whose eyes had watched too long. A table stretched the length of the room. Men in dark suits sat along it, their faces pale in the candlelight, their gazes sharp as knives. Some looked at me with curiosity, others with hunger, still others with the calculation of predators assessing a rival. Delgado leaned back at the far end, his smile coiled and venomous. Beside him stood Luca, my brother. His gaze was steady and unreadable, but his hand touched the crest carved into the wood as if claiming it on my behalf. Naomi Bandari, a voice intoned, primogen of the bloodline. You have called the house. The words echoed like a ritual, a binding. I forced my chin higher. I have. A murmur rippled through the chamber. The oath was older than any empire. To call the house was to demand silence of war until the bloodline spoke. For 72 hours, all blades were sheathed. For 72 hours, words alone carved thrones. Do you accept the ring? The same voice asked. I lifted my hand, the band glinting in the candlelight. I do. Then speak your vow. My throat tightened. The old words written in the journal my mother had left behind burned in my memory. I whispered them, each syllable trembling but clear. I vow blood to remember. I vow truth to endure. I vow fire to rise. The chamber fell silent, and then chaos. Delgado was first. He clapped slow, mocking his laughter sharp as broken glass. How poetic, he drawled. The lost child is found, the crown reborn. Can a girl who bled on Cross's ballroom floor carry a dynasty on her shoulders? Anger flared, but Luca's voice cut through before mine could. She carries more than you ever will, Delgado. She holds our name. Our name. Delgado leaned forward, his smile dark. Or yours, Bandari Caruso. Don't pretend blood makes her your shield. She is Cross's wife, his weapon. Tell me, Naomi, do you wear his mark when lying in his bed? Heat rushed to my cheeks, shame and fury colliding. My lips parted, but Luca slammed his hand against the table before I could speak. Watch your tongue. Or what? Delgado sneered. Will you kill me under oath? No blades, remember. Their laughter stung like acid, and then silence. Because I had risen. My voice was not loud, but it carried. You laugh as if I don't understand what I am. You're wrong. I know exactly what I am. I am Bandari blood. I am Cross's wife. I am the girl who has survived you all. Eyes widened. Whispers rippled. Even Luca stilled. You think being his makes me weak? I continued, my hands trembling, but my gaze steady. But it makes me dangerous. Because if I burn, he burns with me. And if we burn, so do you. The chamber held its breath. Delgado's smile faltered, and Luca's eyes softened. But power is never silent for long. The doors burst open. Alexander entered. He moved like a storm. No vow could bind his men, shadowing him, their rifles gleaming. His suit was blacker than the night outside, his eyes molten steel. The chamber erupted protests, shouts, accusations. But he silenced them with a single word. Enough. His gaze found mine across the room, and for a heartbeat, the world narrowed to fire. You called the house, he said, his voice low, rough. And yet, you forgot one thing. You are not theirs to claim. You are mine. Gasps filled the chamber. You break the oath, one of the elders thundered. I break anything that touches what's mine, Alexander snarled. His hand slammed onto the table, rattling glasses, scattering papers. Naomi does not stand alone. She never has, and she never will. His eyes burned into mine. Not while I breathe. The chamber dissolved into chaos. Men rose shouting. Delgado's laughter returned sharper now, tinged with triumph. Luca's voice clashed with Alexander's, calling me by name and demanding my choice. Naomi. Naomi. My pulse thundered. My vision blurred. I had wanted the truth. I had wished for freedom. And now both had come for me in the form of two men, one bound by blood, one by fire. And in that moment, I realized the truth I had feared all along. No matter what I chose, I would break. I lifted my hand. The chamber fell silent. Even Alexander froze. My voice trembled, but the words were clear. I am Bandari, I said, but I am also Cross. And if either of you thinks you can use me as a weapon, you are wrong. I am the blade. Gasps echoed. Delgado's smirk cracked. Luca's jaw tightened. Alexander's eyes burned with something I could not name. For once, they all listened. Because for the first time, I was not invisible. I was fire. The meeting ended in fractured silence. No treaties, no victories, only war deferred. Luca vanished into shadows, Delgado into smoke. The elders whispered prophecy, danger and blood too old to be ignored. And Alexander. He found me in the corridor, his hand catching mine, his grip trembling, though his voice was steady. You could have died in there, he growled. I lived, I whispered. His gaze burned hotter because of me. Tears stung my eyes. Or despite you. Our silence was sharper than any blade. And yet, when he kissed me, fierce, desperate, consuming, I kissed him back. Because love and hate are the same flame, and we were already burning. If Naomi and Alexander's dangerous dance kept your heart racing, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Everyone likes and follows, and they tell me you're walking this fire with them.